If we haven't met, my name's Tom Danowski with the Oregon Wine Growers and the Oregon Wine Board, and again, we're very glad to have you for our symposium. And to kick off our program, I want to just touch on a couple of things real quick. One is you'll want to make sure that you either write this down, we'll try to remind you a few different times, but all the information that you'll need to connect to the Wi-Fi is right on the screen. And this always sounds easy when you go to a conference to just connect like we're used to connecting in our office, but in these large facilities it's a little bit of an undertaking, and it wouldn't be possible without Amcor. So thank you, Amcor, and please make note of the Wi-Fi access that you're going to need. The second thing I should touch on is the app that we have for the symposium, which really is the best way during all of the sessions to lob in your questions. The moderators will be checking this, and so your sessions can be interactive to the extent that you can get your questions up to them through this app. It's same one we've used last year, but you'll want to make sure that you're current with it, and here's the instructions right on screen for how to do that. I want to bring up our first and sort of the first among equals among all of our sponsors. Our presenting sponsor is a very, very good friend of our Oregon wine business, longtime partner to so many wineries. They are a custom producer of all different closures and packaging solutions for business. And Tricor Winepack stepped up this year and became for the first time the presenting sponsor, and they are one of so many sponsors without whom this symposium that we've come to value and has delivered so much important information to our industry. The symposium is just absolutely not possible, and it certainly isn't possible without a presenting sponsor. So we're very, very glad to have Tricor Winepack with us. I want to introduce their Northwest manager, who is a transplant to Oregon from Worcestershire, England, but she's spent 27 years here in Oregon getting to know us and our wine business, and we had a really nice visit just a few minutes ago, and she's got some comments she'd like to make about how privileged she feels to be a part of this business and to be a part of this event. Please welcome Jillian Brennan.
Good morning. Thank you, Tom, for those kind remarks. It is an honor and a privilege to be your presenting sponsor this year. Tricor Braun have sponsored this event now since the little tabletops in the Eugene Hilton, and look where we are today. It's absolutely marvelous. We love to support this industry. It's a huge part of our economy for both tourism and dollars, and every year you work harder than ever to strive to put out the best product that you can. And believe me, I've drunk plenty of it, and it's pretty darn good. So it's an honor. Please enjoy the show, as they say, and thank you so much for supporting us as much as we support you. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jillian. To keep our program moving, I want to bring up our wine board chairwoman. Our Oregon Wine Board and Oregon Wine Growers staff, you'll meet them over the next couple days, those you might not know already. Eugenia will introduce some of our wine board of directors. If you're not aware, I do want to make clear one thing that I think is very important. Speaking for our management group of about 11 people across both our Oregon Wine Board and our Oregon Wine Growers Association, they work closely together, but they are two very distinct organizations that do not cross over at all in their accountabilities and responsibilities to the industry. But whether it's the Wine Board or the Wine Growers Association, it's easy to forget sometimes that none of us on the management team are state employees. We work for you. We work for the industry. We are not in this hoping that there will be a state pension. There will not be. We are here to work for the industry, and it's a great privilege to do that. And these 2 days for us are the chance that we come to recharge our batteries. Turning now to our board of directors, several people volunteer every year to be appointed by the governor to the Oregon Wine Board. Those that are selected stand for ratification and approval by the Oregon Wine Growers Association members to serve concurrently on the Oregon Wine Growers Association board. Now that might seem really kind of incestuous and interlocked, but they are separate organizations. But having that connective tissue between the two at the board level allows the interdependencies and the interconnections to really work hard for our industry. For example, it was the Oregon Wine Growers Association a couple of years ago that went and got House Bill 5006 passed. That paid direct dividends to the Oregon Wine Board's research and marketing efforts through funding of $500,000. We also, a couple years ago, had the Oregon Wine Growers Association, along with several industry leaders, go to Salem and get the country's very first wine country license plate. That creates a pool of funding that any association around the state can apply to for grant funding to use for marketing and tourism activities. That's another example of where the OWA's work helps benefit the Oregon Wine Board. Those connections are critical. The way that we knit all that together is done at the management and the board level, and we're very fortunate this year to be led by an exceptional executive who's going to step up here in just a second. These 9 directors, once they are appointed by the governor to the wine board and approved by members to serve on the OWA board, they get no pay. They get a pretty lavish lunch of a cold turkey sandwich 4 times a year. And they serve on committees in addition to their board service. And they deserve your acknowledgement and your respect for the effort and the time that they put in. And to speak a little bit about the work of the board and about her own experience and her own hopes and dreams for our industry this year, I'm proud to welcome our board chairwoman, Eugenia Keegan.
Thank you, Tom. You'll see some cups around the room. They say tips on there. That's the retirement program for the people that work for the wine board, so please give generously. I do have the honor and the privilege this morning of welcoming you to the Oregon Wine Symposium 2019. I am Eugenia Keegan. I'm with Jackson Family Wines, and last night we were thinking about when we started the symposium, and believe it or not, it was, I think we agreed it was 2005. We had to go to Harry Peterson Nedry, who is really the best historian that we have, to confirm that. And I think that knowing that, if you recall, it was in Eugene. It was very small at the time. We've grown tremendously. But I believe that I have been to every one. So I want you to know that you probably don't want to attend every one because this is what you end up getting as a reward. Although I do intend to come back up later to get a gold star for perfect attendance over the years. We have 2 very, very packed days. I think there's a slide. There it is. The board, I think as Tom mentioned, we are a voluntary board, and we are approved by there's a nomination committee, and then we're approved by the governor. And then there is an election to take this same board over to the Oregon Wine Growers Association. And so I'm going to ask that question. Everybody here understands the difference between the Oregon Wine Board and the Oregon Wine Growers Association? Yeah, that was my answer. I actually, after years of getting them wrong, I sat my partner David Adelsheim, who obviously knows this stuff because he was part of the founding of it, and said, all right, we're only going to do one thing at dinner tonight. You're going to teach me the difference between the Oregon Wine Board and the Oregon Wine Growers Association. It's a very long dinner, very, very long dinner. The wine board is funded by your grape tax. Every ton of grapes grown in the state of Oregon is subject to a grape tax, and that funds the Oregon Wine Board. Interestingly enough, that tax has not changed in over 45 years. What has changed? The Oregon wine industry. So obviously that is not a stagnant budget. That budget goes up as we produce more tons of grapes, and that's what's financing the Oregon Wine Board. Their charter, education, here we are, this is one of the primary things that they do, marketing, and research. Oregon Wine Growers Association, same board, is the advocacy group, and that is a members only. Maybe I made that sound exclusive. I didn't mean to. Anybody can join. Members only, and it is dues paying, and this is the group that spends their time monitoring what goes on in Salem, and to the extent that it's pertinent to what we do, Washington, D.C. It is very vibrant right now. As you know, we've got a lot going on that takes us down to Salem for legislative action. And that group is very, very busy, and to the extent that you want to support them as a member, they work for you every day, whether you're a member or not. So to the extent that you would like to support them, you can put your check right in that little tip jar that I was mentioning earlier. But please, we would be delighted if you would sign up. The board, I don't think the board has any indicator on their badges. That's probably done out of self-defense, but you can see who they are, and I'd like to quickly introduce them. John Pratt is from Southern Oregon, and John was our leader last year, and thank you, John. I'm sure you're in the room for doing a wonderful job in handing over such a robust organization to me. Jason Tosh from Stoller, Hilda Jones representing the Umpqua from Abasella, Kevin Chambers. Kevin is fabulous. Kevin was on this board, I don't know, 15 years ago or whatever it was, and is a great individual to have so that we don't actually make the same mistakes now that we did earlier. So it's great to have that experience and wisdom on our board. Donna Morris, new as of last year. Donna is an expert in marketing and an incredible person to have with us. Bob Morris is representing the Gorge. Bob flies in on his jet for the meetings. It's pretty cool. Steps out, and it is amazing that he can fly all over the world, and he still makes all of our meetings. Thank you, Bob. And then our two new directors, Justin King from King Estate and Bertoni Faustin from Abbey Creek, both new directors this year, bringing very, very different perspectives, and that's what this board is all about, representing all of you throughout the state. So with that, we're going to get started on the actual festivities. I know tomorrow morning we put Greg Jones on so that you'll come here even with a hangover, because we all need to know what the weather is going to look like, since we live and die by the weather here as farmers. And anything else, Tom? Thank you very much. Enjoy the couple of days. The directors are here for you. We serve you. If you have anything you'd like to discuss with us, please grab one of us, and we're here to chat with you. So welcome to the 2019 symposium.
Thank you, Eugenia, for that. And thank you again to our 9 board members. I think Eugenia might have touched on it very briefly, but our alumni, our emeritus directors are also here with us today, many of them, and I'll try to spend just a quick second acknowledging their service. They're typically spending 2-3-year terms in service to you and your businesses as board members. Some have gone on even longer, and not only do they serve on the board, of course, but they drive most of our committee activity. And again, they just deserve a tremendous amount of your respect and admiration for the time that they invest and that they've invested in wrestling with so many issues related to the exciting prospects of growth for our business. When Jillian was up here just a second ago from Tricor Braun Wine Pack, she and I both forgot to mention that her company is sponsoring the Mimosa Bar at 10 a.m., so we're less than an hour away from that. I don't know how we forgot that, Jillian. And that might come in real handy. You might need a mimosa to soften the blow for this next announcement, because we had a speaker cancel on us because of weather. And Janelle Christian from the TTB, who was going to lead a 10 o'clock seminar on the trade show floor about wine labeling, had to postpone. So we're going to try to get her back here tomorrow if she can get through the weather that she has to get through to get here. But today's 10 o'clock seminar that was scheduled on the trade show floor, led by Janelle from the TTB, is going to have to be postponed. We'll keep you updated on her availability. So that gives you just a few extra minutes to visit with some of our trade show partners and to have an extra splash of one of Jillian's mimosas. We stand at a really tremendous and powerful inflection point in our industry right now. There is simply no place anywhere in the world right now like Oregon for fine wine. It's one of the reasons why we're attracting so much interest from people who are out of state, from companies that are not even in North America. But it's also a tremendous testament to the wines that are being made here, because they are generating consumer sell-through, consumer pull in a way that no other region anywhere in the world is right now. You'll hear this a couple times from us during the next few days. If you're not getting our Oregon Wine Board newsletter, please grab me or any of my team members and shake us and say you want to get that. You've got to be reading that to keep up to date on all the things that are being done with your grape tax money to help advance your businesses. If you read the one that was sent out just last week on the 5th, you saw a little chart that just showed how much more rapidly, compared to the category average, how much more rapidly Oregon is growing. We're growing twice as fast as category averages when we look at the direct-to-consumer channels. And we're growing 8 times as fast as the category average when we look at the Nielsen data that shows us off-premise retail movement. Now, neither of those captures everything, but they are the kind of trend lines that every wine region is hungering for and wants to have, and we have them. And that comes despite the fact that so many Oregon wines are deserving of and command a pretty serious price premium on the shelf and on the wine list. And it was pretty hard to not get awfully excited reading the Wine Spectator just a couple days ago when it came out, and it's the annual Oregon report, because Tim Fish paid you two extraordinary compliments. Number one is just a flat-out bulletproof statement that will soon be on T-shirts and coffee mugs and all that. Tim wrote, and I quote, "Oregon is the most dynamic wine region in the U.S. right now." The most dynamic. And then Tim bookended that with something that's tremendously inspiring, and I quote again, "Oregon is only beginning to tap into its potential." So there's just absolutely no other way to say it than we are just poised for tremendous growth. We're not, though, naive enough or blind to the fact that one of the hardest things to do now is to sell a ton of grapes to a winery, and one of the second hardest things is to sell a case of wine into a restaurant or to an off-premise account. We know that for the first time, and you might have seen this number, there are now 10,000 American wineries. 10,000 American wineries. Forget everybody outside the country. The competitive environment now is just as brutal as it has ever been. And one of the reasons why Oregon is thriving is not only the efforts that you make to invest in your businesses, in talent and quality and innovation, but because some of the backbones that our founders built this industry on are being revitalized all the time. Things like collaboration that we talk a lot. You're going to taste some wines that we're called under a project banner called Solidarity that bring that to life. Those wines will be poured tonight. We've talked incessantly about wine quality. No other state except Oregon, no other state has more than half of its wines, when reviewed by Wine Spectator, no other state has more than half of its wines, as does Oregon, rating 90 points and above. No other state. That's one of the reasons talent comes here, investment comes here. It's also one of the reasons why consumers are willing to pay just a little bit more for what you're making, but I need to keep us on program. One of the other core backbones of our industry has been sustainability and regenerative farming practices. If you didn't know it, Oregon typically is right up there near the top in the proportion of its vineyards that are third-party certified for sustainable practices, and that does include the whole gamut of certifications, whether it's live or organic or Demeter. But you might not have known that the Willamette Valley has more biodynamic certified acres than any other AVA anywhere in the country. You might not have also known that Oregon, representing only about 1.5% of the American wine made, Oregon at 1.5% has more B Corp certified wineries than any other state. And those things underpin the sustainability credentials that are becoming so important in today's marketplace. I'm going to ask our speaker to come up and join me because her credentials in this area are absolutely bulletproof. Our speaker served for several years as the VP of Worldwide Public Affairs at Kodak. before she went on to her role as Senior VP of Corporate Responsibility for Starbucks, where I used to work. She was 6 years at Starbucks. She earned her MBA at the Bordeaux School of Management in France. She did her thesis and her book on sustainability in wine. You might recognize her because she has been a faculty member and a seminar leader at our IPNC, and we're just so very glad to have such an esteemed speaker with us, and I hope you'll join me in giving a very warm welcome to Sandra Taylor. Thank you.
Good morning. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir because you're all so committed to sustainability. I like to talk about sustainability. I think sustainability is a much misunderstood and maligned term, and it's often misused by marketers. I think the definition for me as a business person really is depicted in this slide. Sustainability is really about the triple bottom line. It's the nexus of social justice, environmental responsibility, environmental protection, and economic stewardship, obviously. It's important to be financially sustainable. Now, what does this mean specifically for the wine industry? We talk a lot about whether organic or biodynamic, sustainable wine growing. I think clearly you understand that organic is about legal requirements, biodynamic, it's natural alternatives to soil enrichment. Sustainable wine growing, I think, is a much broader concept. It's about what happens from the vineyard to the time the bottle lands on the shelf. And I think that's important. It's the soil's fertility, provides a healthy environment for workers, and a commitment to communities. Now, certified sustainable wine growing is a broad concept. It's a concept that I like to promote and encourage because I think it's broader than just soil enrichment. It's broader than just the forbearance of the use of chemicals in the vineyard. Obviously, it can involve biodynamic organic farming, cover crops. You know better than I all of the aspects of how to be sustainable in the vineyard. But it also it involves protecting air and quality, involving integrating energy, renewable sources of energy in the winery, protecting air and water quality, preserving local ecosystems of wildlife and fauna. It's supplier certification. I think it's really important. Some of the work that I've done in a variety of sectors, including coffee, obviously, is integrating sustainability throughout the entire supply chain. That's really critical. Lighter bottles, fair labor practices, something that we're going to talk a little bit more about. Emissions reduction through bulk shipping, through bottling at market, and wine in kegs. I think we have an exhibitor here that I've done some work with that will talk about wine in kegs, really an important way for us to be more sustainable in terms of packaging and distribution. So it's exciting that there are so many sustainability programs that have developed and evolved around the world. Chile is a relatively new one, but very successful. That requires independent audits, requires full supply chain compliance in order to be certified sustainable. In order for a wine to be certified sustainable, all of its suppliers must be part of the sustainability program. It also requires a management commitment to full social responsibility. So the Chilean program says it's not enough to be a generous philanthropist. They want to know that the management of the winery has a culture and a commitment to social responsibility throughout its entire operation. I think that's important. And of course, a bottle seal. New Zealand had a commitment to be 100% sustainable, which I believe they have accomplished 99%, and they say the only reason why they're not 100% is because there are new entrants into the industry. But they recognize that in order that perhaps some producers in New Zealand felt that the bar was relatively low for producers to be certified sustainable. and that was a way to get everybody into the program. And I think Sustainable Wine New Zealand has taken that to heart, and they've now launched what they call a continuous improvement program. There are 9 stretch goals that producers, wineries, and vineyards can take on to really take their sustainability to a higher level. These involve water, energy, optimizing renewable energy from multiple sources, a commitment to zero waste, air quality and greenhouse gas emissions, obviously soil enrichment, plant protection, people, growing their people and communities. New Zealand has a very strong emphasis currently at gender diversity in their industry, and not only promoting and developing women to be leaders in the industry, but recognizing that that's going to help them sell wine to women consumers going forward. Biodiversity is a really important commitment in this new continuous improvement program. And obviously business, financial resilience, which is important for them to recognize that you've got to be successful in terms of business. So, let's see. South Africa, I don't want to go too fast here. South Africa has had a history of being very committed to environmental sustainability and has a very strong program. Again, strong supplier compliance is required. They obviously have had some issues with labor. They continue to have issues with labor. There are some outliers in the industry who just have not taken on some labor requirements. And so they've introduced a new ethical trading initiative that wineries have signed onto. But they also have strong habitat and biodiversity protections. The World Wildlife Fund has collaborated with Wines of South Africa in a new program called Biodiversity Champions. And all of these things carry a bottle seal. It may start to be a little confusing to have a seal for each one of these different programs, but I think it's just a testament to how strongly they believe in sustainability in that industry. And of course, in the United States. So California Sustainable Wine Growing has more mass, I think, but I frankly think Oregon and Live has been the leader in rigorous sustainability criteria and widespread adoption, and continues to be the leader in this space. So it's a real model, I think, for the rest of the world. Obviously, California has SIP and Lodi rules, and the growers, Sonoma growers, have made a commitment to be 100% sustainable by 2019, and I think they definitely are well on their way to accomplishing that. Then we have some recent sustainability initiatives: Argentina, Austria, Australia. Australia has a strong program, but they have several, and they're working to collaborate and combine those. Italy had 15 different programs, and a couple of years ago they collapsed those, merged those really into Equilitas, which is, I think, going to be an important initiative. And an interesting thing about the Italian sustainability program is they felt that perhaps all of the other programs that preceded them didn't give enough attention to cultural diversity and maintaining our commitment to culture and also taste. We talk a lot about, all of the ills that we need to solve with sustainability, but we maybe don't talk enough about taste quality, and I think we need to do more of that, and so do the Italian producers. France does not have a national program, but the Champagne industry region is very committed to rigorous sustainability, and obviously they are very much affected by climate change. Germany has Fair and Green, which is very much like other sustainability programs, but still has very few, not very many producers are part of the program, but they're working on that. And of course, even in the United States, Long Island now has a sustainability program, and they just started a third-party verification of their practices. So there's a lot going on around the world of sustainability. So why do wine companies adopt sustainable practices? Like any other business, it attracts and retains employees, especially millennial employees who want to work for a company that's committed to sustainability. It increases customer loyalty, which I'll talk about a little bit more shortly. And then it strengthens the supply chain. It reduces operating costs. There are upfront costs for installing renewable energy, but over time, I think this leads to cost savings, and certainly in water as well. It fulfills our social commitments to communities. I can't stress enough how important it is for us as being in the agricultural sector to have a commitment to communities and to social responsibility. It meets the retailer hurdle, as retailers are really expecting and demanding sustainability. And it complies with an industry mandate and peer pressure, as many of these regional sustainability programs are. So let's talk about the retailer hurdle. For many retailers, they're concerned about their own sustainability reputation and their own CSR programs. So they frequently play a role of curator for the consumer. They are helping and educating consumers about what it means to be sustainable. A decade ago, it was rare for consumers to even talk about wine miles or carbon miles, organic, biodynamic. They didn't understand those terms, but increasingly they do. And part of that is because retailers have a concern in this space. Some retail chains demand sustainability, even though they don't really know what that means. They don't necessarily have specific criteria. Still others have very specific criteria. I've done some work with the Swedish liquor monopoly, Systembolaget, which is influential throughout all of Scandinavia, and they have very specific requirements, as does the Liquor Control Board in Ontario and the SAQ in Quebec. They're very clear about what they expect, and I know that they are looking at how they can be even more rigid about what it means to be sustainable and to be on their shelves. The Sustainability Consortium in the US, which is led by Walmart, has very specific KPIs for a whole range of products, including wine. And these, many of you are probably familiar with this. They have very specific requirements around fertilizer and nutrients, pesticide, supply chain transparency. Their assumption is that their buyers, their procurement managers, really don't understand all of the sectors that they procure from. And their idea was they're going to write the script. These KPIs are the script that they give to their procurement managers so that they, when they meet with your salespeople, they have some idea of what to ask. And then the following year, when they come back again, they are a little bit better educated. So their goal, the Sustainability Consortium, is really to educate procurement managers so that they understand what sustainability means in their purchase conversations. And then there are consumer expectations. Sustainability is really gaining momentum with consumers. I mean, you just have to watch the Super Bowl ads to see how much more we are talking about sustainability and corporate social responsibility at the mainstream. Nielsen did its insight study on consumer expectations in 2015, and they found that 66% of consumers said they were willing to pay more for sustainable brands. 50% of global consumers take green factors into account when they make their purchases. By 2018, Nielsen's study showed 81% of respondents said it's extremely or very important that companies implement programs that protect and improve the environment. And 73% said they would change their consumption patterns. Now, a recent study conducted by Washington State University I find very interesting, and this was a study of the California and Washington wine markets. And they really were looking at certifications and price premiums. They concluded that wines with organic, sustainable, and biodynamic produced claims, certified or self-claiming, all commanded higher prices in the marketplace. Very interesting. The highest additional price premium went to those wines certified by Live. The program from Oregon and Washington, this was a study of the Washington and California wine markets. So the highest price premiums went to wine certified by Live, Napa Green, those certified salmon safe and fish friendly. And to my surprise, certified biodynamic ranked even higher, but only when it was described as certified biodynamic. Most consumers still don't really understand Demeter. They don't understand what that means in terms of their concept of sustainability. So consumers clearly are paying more attention to the impact of their decisions on the world around them and the impact of their purchase decisions in terms of sustainability. They want to see proof of sustainability, and I think that certification is that proof. They want to trust and rely on certifications that companies are credible and authentic. It's really important for our industry to provide that information. They want to know about transparency and authenticity, and in this age of social media, that's absolutely critical. So brands really are important. I like to talk a lot about brands. I worked at Starbucks, and at Starbucks, our brand, a big element of our brand was sustainability and corporate responsibility. Consumers really didn't always understand what that meant, but we felt that it was our obligation to educate them and help them understand sustainability in the context of their everyday lives. Consumers want to feel like they can make a difference in the world through their purchases, either in terms of a social need or environmental responsibility. Many consumers don't know how else to be sustainable or responsible. They don't know where to make contributions, but they like to feel like the products that they purchase are somehow helping them be more responsible and help them make a difference in the world. So successful organizations learn how to engage these savvy consumers. Marketers, their job is really to educate and to promote. Marketers want to understand the needs of consumers and target those needs. And I encourage us to figure out how we do that. Sustainability is here to stay. It's a growth and innovation opportunity. It's evolving. I know each month or each week we hear another story about millennials and whether they're going to buy a lot of wine, how committed they really are to sustainability. So that's something that changes. But no matter what, this is a part of our world, especially in fast-moving consumer goods, that's here to stay. For most consumers, sustainability is no longer a buzzword, and clearly for the wine industry in Oregon, it's no longer a buzzword. But the challenge we have, I think, is to figure out how we promote what we do. The wine industry, if you recall the list I gave of all of the various regional sustainability programs, some are more rigorous, some are more stringent, all of them are making an effort to include more producers in the program. But I think, so the industry knows what to do to be sustainable. But I think what we haven't quite mastered is how do we communicate that to retailers, to distributors, and to consumers so that they value what it is we are producing and what we're committed to. So that's our challenge. We've got to figure out how to raise our profile in terms of sustainability. It's pretty clear already from some of the academic research that it can lead to price premiums. And I think we also have to figure out how we communicate about this in a fun way. Unfortunately, sustainability is a lot of doom and gloom. It's climate change, it's rising sea levels, it's rising temperatures where it's causing more hurricanes. There's global hunger. But I think we are doing a lot to make a difference in that space, and we have to challenge our marketers to come up with ways to talk about sustainability in a fun and exciting way, but help consumers understand in a positive direction the difference that they can make in the world by buying our sustainably produced products. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandra, for that, and thank you for your attention to her remarks. It's really a great kind of accident of timing that we have such an esteemed and well-credentialed sustainability expert who has already inserted herself into our wine culture through activities such as the IPNC. So thank you again, Sandra. If you would like to hear more or would like to talk a little bit more with Sandra, she'll be here today, but also, more importantly, she will be on the Linfield campus this coming Friday at 10:30 giving her talk that will go into just a little bit more detail than we had time to get into today around sustainability. I was really interested to hear a little bit about Sandra's remarks, specifically with respect to sort of the global audit of different countries and wine regions and their sustainability efforts. I've gotten to know my counterpart in New Zealand a little bit over the last several months. In fact, we're doing a special kind of an Oregon and New Zealand partnership program this coming spring in New York. But when I was talking to my counterpart, Philip, he had a really interesting way of kind of describing the escalation in expectations that consumers and our trade channel partners have around sustainability. The goalpost just continues to move, and the rigor continues to kind of dial up around what people are willing to believe with respect to sustainability and regenerative credentials in fine wine. And in addition to, the farming and the winemaking and the way you're treating your labor force and the way you go to market through your supply chain, there's an increasing recognition that we need to be good citizens in the business, in the communities in which we do business. We don't have to look very far, about 600 miles to the south, to see what happens when community activists start to question the equation, the balancing act between having wine be a part of your culture and some of the costs that come with that, in terms of water usage and traffic and housing price escalations. Protecting what my friend Philip calls our social license is going to be a critical part of our industry's mandate here, so that the communities in which we do business want us to continue doing business. And I know so many of our regional associations around Oregon do a great job of that. That's certainly an area where we're going to continue to focus on how we can be of assistance at the Wine Board. I want to turn now to the next part of our program, and that is going to be our Oregon Wine Board Public Relations and Marketing presentation. We are structured at the Wine Board around the three kind of critical elements that are baked into the founding legislation of the Oregon Wine Board that was signed into law by Governor Kulongoski about 16 years ago. Those three critical charter areas are marketing and education and scientific research. Since the time that that bill was passed and the Wine Board came into existence, all of those disciplines have matured and have intensified and have segmented themselves. Marketing is now far more than what it used to be. Now it includes all the different aspects of the mix, and it includes a specific focus now on media relations and PR. You're going to hear some of our marketing and PR folks now from the Wine Board come up, starting with Sally, and then Kai, and then Christina. And in addition to, we're going to talk about research in a little bit, but specifically with respect to marketing and PR, you'll see how we've recognized the responsibilities we have to help you and your business in media relations, in trade relations, and consumer relations. We're trying to align not only around functions, marketing, PR, scientific research and education, but also around audience segments. So during the course of their remarks, you'll hear them talk about how does this program express itself in the trade, how in the consumer, how to the media, and how we can get you engaged at the industry level. I'll say it one more time, but you'll probably hear me say it a lot. If you're not getting our newsletter, grab us. You've got to get it to be able to know what's going on. I'm going to bring up our Wine Board marketing team now, starting with Sally Murdoch, who directs our communications and media relations efforts.
'18 held many great stories for the Oregon wine industry, but it was also a year of measurement as we really started to wrap our arms around where we are in the press and where we like to see ourselves be in the press more. We had great stories like the announcement of the Van Duzer Corridor AVA, Jackie Winters winning the Wine Leadership Award. This is a picture of a media tour that we held at Illahee when we brought the Seattle Times, the Somme Journal, and the Washington Wine Blog. The Atticus opened last year, and then we also had the launch of the Solidarity Program that I'm going to go into more detail in a few minutes. As such, our media coverage and the results were more robust in 2018 with all these great stories. Our coverage increased 35% in 2018 to 18,598 articles mentioning Oregon wine, up from 13,740 in 2017. This is an average of 51 articles every single day on Oregon wine, up from 37 per day in 2017. In our office, we also measure the varieties that the writers are writing about in Oregon wine. And a quick look at this chart, you can tell with the red bar being 2017 and blue being 2018, that Oregon Pinot Noir was up 28% in media coverage last year. We had 1,500 more mentions. Sparkling wine went up more than five-fold to 1,100 mentions in media, up from only 167 the year prior. Pinot Gris went down a bit, 15%, as did Riesling, but Syrah rose 79% in media coverage. We also measure the tone and the sentiment of articles that show up on Oregon wine. We have a service that we use called Meltwater, and they measure every single article as positive, neutral, or negative. And we count them up at the end of the year and see how we net out. Where OWB comes in is if a writer is approaching us on deadline with a story that kind of sounds like it could go down a negative path. A lot of times we can pivot by giving them more information to write about maybe a broader angle, and sometimes can turn that article in a more positive direction. In 2018, our sentiment was definitely more positive. These two donut charts you can tell by 2017. The green slice shows the positive articles. So in 2017, we had just under 5,000 positive articles on Oregon wine. In 2018, in the chart on the left, that number swelled up to 8,000. Similarly, our negative stories were happily dampened by the positive ones. In 2017, this little red slice shows that there were 1,890 negative stories, but that dropped to 443, almost 70%, which is remarkable in light of the fire and smoke indicator coverage that we received in 2018, which typically marks as negative. We also measure where stories originate. You know that we need articles written outside of Oregon, about Oregon, to drive traffic to Oregon. So these heat maps that we measure show where the articles are being written from. In 2017, 9.4 of the articles written on Oregon wine were in Oregon publications. In 2018, despite the fact that our articles went up 35%, the proportion of those went down to 6% as writers in other states started to cover Oregon wine from other states. So for example, in New York, there were 637 Oregon wine articles in 2018. That's 220 more than the year prior. Texans provided 6.6% of the stories written about Oregon wine with about 1,000 articles. That's as many articles that were written about Oregon wine in Oregon. In Florida, we had 100 more articles written in Oregon wine in 2018 than we did the year prior, which equated to about one article every day in a Florida publication about Oregon wine. In 2018, we hosted a number of large comprehensive tastings for media in Oregon, which netted numerous 90+ ratings for state's producers. For the Wine Advocate's new reviewer, Erin Brooks, she came here, this was her first trip to Oregon, and here are some highlights from her 2-week stay here and subsequent reviews of 1,000+ wines. Last year, we had the highest Chardonnay score ever for Oregon at 97+ for the Minimus Chardonnay 1984 Stein Vineyard. We had a strong showing for Chardonnay in 2018 with 66 rated 90+. We had all of the more than 1,000 wines that Erin rated. They were reviewed across 15 AVAs, which is the most ever. And Pinot Noir continued to shine with more than 500 reviewed versus 318 the year prior. JamesSuckling.com also came to Oregon last year. Reviewer Nick Stock came in from Australia in late October, and he tasted through 400 wines in 5 days in Portland. Nick and his co-author Raphael from Italy came through Portland, and for the first time, they had never been here and tapped into our region's excitement and excellent winemaking. Nick reviewed 2016 Oregon Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays, and 92% of the Oregon wines he reviewed had a score of 90 plus, or 374 out of 406. As far as being in media relations, you rarely hear writers asking for more from us, but they tend to hear from us quite a bit. But in the case of The Wine Enthusiast, one of our core wine publications, Paul Griggett wants exactly that. He asked that I encourage all Oregon wineries to submit all new releases on a regular basis so that he can visit and write future stories. So in any of your new releases, please include Paul Griggett on those emails. Also watch for calls in the grapevine, where for the cost of a bottle of wine and shipping, you can get your brand in front of thousands, maybe millions of potential consumers. And as well as hosting media tours this year in 2019, we'll also do timely outreach to these publications with stats, figures, industry info, and active pitches. On the note of communications in 2019, we're going to make more opportunities to visit smaller wineries with press. We've partnered with our friends at Travel Oregon on 2 media dinners that we're hosting this week. We're going to have 20 writers to have intimate conversations with our winemakers. We'll have 10 winemakers in all from 4 regions. As well as media dinners, Travel Oregon will be with us for 2 media tours this year. And finally, Oregon Solidarity is a key message with Travel Oregon as they help spread the word on what makes Oregon different with collaboration. Oregon Solidarity is the effort of King Estate and Willamette Valley Vineyards, who teamed up to help wine growers whose grapes were abruptly rejected last harvest. They were joined by Sylvan Ridge Winery and the Irie Vineyards to make a Rogue Valley AVA, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Rosé of Pinot Noir called Oregon Solidarity. The net sale proceeds from these wines will be donated to the Rogue Valley Vintners to help support vineyards in the region. And tonight, at the soiree, we hope you'll make a special stop at 5 p.m., where you'll be able to be among the first to taste Oregon Solidarity, as the rosé is being bottled this week. Finally, if you have any stories that you'd like to see run on Oregon wine, let me know. Write it on a napkin, put it on a piece of paper, email me. Writers are always looking for industry trends, startup stories, and I keep a running log of stories to pitch on our spirit of collaboration, pioneering, and excellent quality winemaking. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Kai McMurtry.
Thank you, Sally. You can tell that I am as handsome in real life as that headshot claimed earlier. Thank you. Good morning, Oregon. My name is Kai, and I manage our consumer programming. I'm going to start with the obvious this morning, which is Oregon wine is great. You know that. You don't need me to tell you. Quality is not our obstacle to even greater success. As Tom mentioned earlier, the 2018 Nielsen report confirms that Oregon grew at 8 times the category rate nationally. When consumers can grab a bottle of Oregon wine and try it, they're satisfied, and they come back for more. However, a recent Wine Opinions consumer survey returned the data that you see on screen here. Among those who buy in our category, more than a third cite awareness and trial as a barrier to purchase. So this morning I'm going to touch on a few of the ways the OWB is building awareness for brand Oregon and working to incentivize and facilitate wine trial in your tasting rooms and around the country. For consumers in Oregon, May is Oregon Wine Month. Now in its 8th year, Oregon Wine Month is a platform upon which wineries, distributors, restaurants, and retailers can build awareness, enable trade support, and amplify the tasting room activations of wineries big and small around the state. New for 2019, we're partnering with the Oregonian and Oregon Live to reach readers and viewers using print, digital, and social. The partnership will deliver millions of impressions with enhanced consumer data from both first and third-party partners like Condé Nast and MasterCard, ensuring we're reaching not just your neighbors, but also those most likely to visit your businesses and patronize the restaurants and retail establishments selling your products. So how can you get involved in Wine Month now? You can order tasting room point of sale material by March 1st on the industry toolkit. You can start planning Oregon Wine Month events and add them to our consumer calendar. You can download and share Oregon Wine Month graphics with your audiences. And possibly most importantly, you can learn about those elements, all of the consumer and trade programming elements for Wine Month at the February 21st webinar. Registration is open now on the Oregon Wine Month Marketing Toolkit. For consumers outside of Oregon, the OWB was awarded a $175,000 USDA grant to address trial and awareness in high potential markets. Branded as the Oregon Wine Trail, our first event was in LA in April of 2018 and included an invite-only masterclass, a walk-around trade and media tasting, and a ticketed consumer tasting. This event series leverages grant funding to increase the impact of your tax dollars. So we're hitting the road again on May 6th to New York with nearly 60 wineries and friends from Olympia Provisions, Jacobson Salt Company, Stumptown Coffee, and more. There'll be 2 final events in this Wine Trail series in early 2020, and I hope that those of you who are interested will be able to join us. By all metrics, trade, consumer, and industry attendees were very satisfied with our LA activation. 97% of trade survey respondents said they were more likely to add Oregon wines to their businesses. 92% of consumers said they were more likely to purchase Oregon wine in a restaurant or shop. And 90% of your peers said they were satisfied or very satisfied with the day's events. As has been mentioned several times already this morning from the stage, to stay informed about upcoming Wine Trail events, please make sure you're receiving the biweekly Grapevine newsletter. If not, you can sign up on the industry.oregonwine.org homepage. And for consumers everywhere, excuse me, I'm pleased to share with you the brand new Oregon Wine Touring Guide. This 4th edition was just printed a few days ago and is available now for the first time. This 2019 guide is nearly 90 pages in length and features new story content, photography, and itineraries for all of Oregon's wine regions. It's a free visitation and planning resource for consumers everywhere. Including this new edition, we've now printed 250,000 copies for curious fans in all 50 states, and when we surveyed those who have ordered the guide, 62% said the guide directly contributed to their decision to go tasting while in Oregon, and 92% said it was useful during their travels. The Oregon Wine Touring Guide is a tactile reply to the issue of trial and awareness critical to your business. Inside the guide are 500 tasting room listings. We make every effort to collect that data from you and need your participation to ensure that data is robust and accurate. Once collected, it's made available in the printed guide, in the guide's digital version, as an online trip planning tool, and as of last week, in Travel Oregon's tourism information system called OTIS for short. In partnering with Travel Oregon, we aim to create one simple point of data entry for you, in addition to making your tasting room information available easily and accurately around the state and to the millions of visitors to traveloregon.com annually. To verify your data or learn more, visit the Tasting Room Listings Toolkit on the industry website. And as a final note on that, our partners in this Travel Oregon program are with us at Symposium today. So if you have any questions, please grab me in the halls and I'd be happy to connect us all. How can you get involved with the touring guide? When I said earlier that it was available for the first time today, I meant literally today. By the time you leave, I will be, along with our friends at Travel Oregon, camped next to the elevators on the way to the garage, and I invite you to grab a case on your way out. That will help us share this resource with your guests as quickly and as cost-effectively as possible. Thank you for your attention, and please welcome my colleague, Christina.
Good morning, Oregon. I have a quick question for you. Who here wants to sell more wine? Yeah? I really want you to sell more wine too. In fact, that's the guiding objective for my job as Trade Relations and Education Manager. Every day I'm working to create, communicate, and deliver programs that provide value for distributors, sommeliers, and retail buyers, and get them excited about Oregon wine. The Oregon Wine Board Trade Relations programs are designed to introduce key members of the trade to the unique value of the Oregon wine category, paving the way for your salespeople to follow up and seal the deal with more wine placements. These initiatives include Oregon Wine Month, TechSom Conference sponsorship, and the TechSom shipping program. And what I'm going to focus on today, the Oregon Wine Board's Trade Education Program. Kai mentioned earlier statistics underlying a couple of issues Oregon wines are facing in the current marketplace. While those numbers feel a little discouraging, another finding gave us hope. 61% of that same group cite recommendations from retail and restaurant staff as the most important factors in their purchasing decisions. This statistic underscores an opportunity that has guided the OWB's trade marketing strategy since 2016. Marketing through trade education. In other words, educating and inspiring the trade will result in increased Oregon wine placements and recommendations for Oregon wine. In August 2016, we launched the Oregon Wine Resource Studio, a website that serves as a platform for a current, comprehensive collection of presentations, maps, videos, podcasts, and more. Presentations were designed with trade education in mind, so they're great for things like distributor general sales meeting presentations and restaurant staff trainings. But I'm finding that many wineries are also using the materials for tasting room staff trainings and to educate their national sales teams. If you've never checked out this website, or it's been a while since you've done so, I really encourage you to do that, to check it out after this presentation, and because there's a few new things that you'll see. I recently completed an update of the site that included updating the presentations with the new Oregon Wine and Vineyard Report data, added a new presentation and map on the Van Duzer corridor, and based on your feedback, updated the navigation of the site so that you can find what you're looking for faster and easier. If you like what you see, please share the Resource Studio with your sales team, distributors, restaurant and retail contacts, your mother, your grandmother, and pretty much everybody. The Oregon Wine Resource Studio and its presentation serve as the foundation of the Oregon Wine Board's Trade Education Program. In April 2018, the Oregon Wine Board's resident master of wine, Bree Stock, used the presentations to give a webinar geared towards energizing the trade for the Oregon Wine Month in May. Over 200 people from around the world registered for the webinar. The next month, in May, we also took the trade show on the road to Los Angeles, where Bree and Master Sommelier Chris Tangi presented Mastering Oregon. This masterclass was packed to capacity with 68 key buyers from around the city and over 100 people on the wait list. And this class was really effective. A post-event survey revealed 100% of attendees said they were more likely to add Oregon wine to their business, and 96% of attendees reported themselves more likely to teach others about Oregon wine. So the question for 2019 became, how do we meet the trade demand for Oregon wine education around the world? For the first time ever, the Oregon Wine Board will be offering Learn Oregon, an online education curriculum developed to train trade members to sell Oregon wine confidently. The program begins the week of March 4th and will run 4 weeks and touches on important topics like Oregon's AVAs, environmental sustainability, labeling regulations, and selling tactics. The curriculum will be delivered via email in bite-sized segments with opportunities for participants to win weekly prizes based on their responses. The training will culminate in a 45-minute live and recorded webinar given by Bree. The registration deadline for the program is March 1st, so please share this link with program details and registration to your distributor and trade contacts. While the Learn Oregon curriculum was designed specifically with the trade audience in mind, much of the information will be relevant to Oregon winery employees. You and your staff are welcomed to sign up to participate as well. So thank you so much for coming today to the Oregon Wine Symposium. It's great to see all of you here. More information about everything that we discussed today can be found at industry.oregonwine.org. And Sally, Kai, and I will be hanging out up here by the stage for a while if you'd like to chat. The education sessions will begin promptly at 11 a.m. Next up is our first trade show break, which includes a poster session in room E141. So enjoy the trade show and the mimosas, and have a good day. Thank you.